So we got this intake from the car swap meet, and we're gonna put it on the old junk bucket Torino over there. It's kind of a weird design. I guess some people did this. They did this little clover leaf thing to kind of match the barrels of the carbonators, but I don't like it. So I got some of this Dicam. I got a 4150 gasket, line everything up, and then took a scribe, marked that all out, and I'm just gonna open up all of these little clovers, and then you can see here where it didn't quite, the casting didn't quite match. I'm just gonna match everything. I'm not doing any high performance modifications to this this intake. It's mostly just I mean, maybe it's worth a couple horsepower, I don't know. It's mostly for me. I enjoy doing it. I think everything will match better. The intake that I have on that Torino is completely wrong, and I'll show you why when we dig into that I have the wrong intake on there. But like I said, cheap parts availability was what I started with and what I'm ending with. And this ain't the best intake ever made, but it's way better than the one that's on there. It's also aluminum. Ford big blocks have this exhaust crossover that allows exhaust to blow through the intake manifold, and that was for this port here, which had some tube type things that went up to the choke, and when it heated up it would open the choke. The problem with that is they ran it right under the carburetor, which and even worse is that the original intakes were cast iron. So you can see this original 4-barrel intake has that crossover right here, and you can actually see this discoloration. It's from the heat from the exhaust gases going through here, and it would superheat this plate right here and boil the fuel in your carburetor. So pretty poor design. We're gonna take care of that. We don't need it, we don't want it. I'm gonna block it off on both sides so no exhaust is going and heating up my intake. I mean, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. It's gonna not make a difference except for in my brain, which is important. It never ends, people. So something you really wanna watch out for, a couple of tips and tricks. First of all, you know, treat this like your high school prom date. You know, take your time, come up on your slow, don't rush, and don't be scared. Just go ahead and do it. Don't take too much material. You know, like I said, you can see that this clover don't really match right here to that, but that's where my gasket ends. I could open my gasket up a little more, but the carburetor's sitting on top of here. Taking that farther this way is not gonna gain me anything. So that's as far as I need to go. I'll clean it up a little bit, but it doesn't need any more than that. And you can see on this side, it does actually continue out here into the leaf of the clover. So this will match. This is gonna be just like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's fine. Like I said, it's gonna be covered by the carburetor. If you want, you could blend that in and make it look better. Put a straight edge right there. I might not. When you're working with aluminum, it's gonna plug up. It's gonna do this right here. Don't be scared of that, it's expected. Aluminum's a softer material. Just get you a pick or even a stiff wire brush or something like that, and you can pull that blockage out of there. If I can do it one-handed. There you go. And then what I do, there's cutting fluids you could put on there. I just got a little oil and Lucas mixed up, and I'll put some of that on there, wipe it around, and keep that oiled every so often. If you feel the bit starting to jump and bounce, it's plugged up. Clean it out, oil it, and then get back to work. It's really not that difficult. Don't be scared. I would suggest doing this simpler stuff a few times before you start digging into head ports and runners on the intake and stuff like that. Just most important thing is be patient. Take your time, keep your work even. I'm working back to this line right here. I'm not going to just hog it down to that line and then hog it down. I'm going to work this whole surface flat and just, you know, I'll cut off like this much flat, and then I'll keep working it and cut off a little more flat, and just keep working it back and working it back and working it back until you meet your line. And remember, you're working in 3 dimensions. Don't just come over and meet your line and then leave the bottom sticking out. You know, keep your eye moving around and looking at all different directions while you're cutting, so you can keep a nice flat surface all the way down. And you know, just like I said, do it. Don't be scared of it. So this end's done. I went ahead and matched it to those clovers. I just used this and put the port, you know, right up against the edge, and then scribed another line, and then took it out flat until everything matched. And there's 2 schools of thought on this. One is smooth is fast, so you want to polish all of this up so the air flows through it better. And then the other school is a little texture allows the fuel and air to atomize better. We're not looking for every ounce of horsepower we can get, and also that smooth is fast thing. I think that kind of applies in the cylinder, in the chamber, in the head. If you're running a higher compression engine on the street and you have like an iron head or even an aluminum head, you want to eliminate any protrusions or roughness to eliminate hot spots, to try to put the curve on detonation right off the bat. And then of course it's going to be fuel type, fuel ratio, and timing that's going to ultimately dictate how much compression you can run on the street. So I got iron heads on that, and I'm at 11.2 to 1 compression on the street on 91 octane, and I'm fine. It's all about, like I said, timing and fuel ratios. You're going to be a little richer with a little less timing, but the power the car's putting out is already phenomenal. 1 down, 3 to go.
I couldn't believe hearing you say, I think that GTO is fast in Torino.
It's fast, man. It's fast. It's going to break stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because that's got the original little tiny rear end that Pontiac put in them. It's not got long to live.
No. So what are you going to do with that? Show it?
No, man. I'm going to daily drive it. It's going to be my new car, brother. I could go to the car lot and buy a new Ford Escort or whatever, or I could drive my brand new 66 GTO everywhere.
I drive a GTO everywhere.
Yep. I could go buy a $100,000 truck or drive that everywhere. Hey. But this is what we ended up with. Got a good match all the way around. No more of those whatever the heck they were cast in there intruding on anything. And I got some intake gaskets, and when I measure them up against the ports on this, I don't know if these are for Super Cobra jets or Cobra jets or something, but the port size is quite a bit bigger on the gasket. I'm going to block off these exhaust crossovers, but I don't know, I'm not going to hog that out yet when it's that much material. I guess it's not too much, but that's quite a bit, until I check the heads and see where they land on this gasket, because I only want to match this port to the port on the head. I don't want to go any bigger. All right, we're going to get this intake off, and we're going to switch it out with this nice shiny aluminum one. It's dirty. We're going to do port matching, make sure that's all good. I'll show you why this intake is no good on here. We'll do a little upgrade to keep the air charge, fuel air charge coming in there cooler, to stop from boiling the fuel off. And so let's get to it. Anybody that's worked on a small block, big block, whatever Ford knows the dreaded stuck distributor dilemma. I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a helping of that and let it sit for a few minutes. I don't think we're gonna have trouble with it being stuck, but that's always a good preventative measure. Well, let's get that intake off of there and see what we're working with. I gotta get a haircut. It's getting out of control, man. Now I know this carburetor had a few lean spots going down the road using my air fuel ratio gauge. Shout out to Godzilla Torino for selling that to me. Works great. So it had some lean spots, so I need to do some adjusting on this. It's going to be jets and power valve, but I'm not going to do any of that adjusting yet until after I have the new intake on and I've driven it around again, because believe it or not, changing that intake is most likely going to change my tune-up. But I like this Brawler carburetor. It runs really good. So I'm not gonna bring it up on top dead center. I am gonna pull the distributor out, so all I'm gonna do is mark the orientation of the distributor body and the orientation of the rotor. When I drop it back in, I put everything in the same spot. We should be good. Anytime you're doing something like this, it's always a good idea to just inspect everything as it comes out. I don't expect to see any excessive wear, but you just want to make sure. I mean, this hasn't been together very long, but that O-ring looks like it might need a little love. And I'm going to check on this. That seems like awfully excessive end play. And that could very well be because this is the cheapest eBay, HEI, blasphemy, Chevy part on a Ford engine distributor that I could find. Because cheap, it's gotta be cheap, right? Gotta do something with this hair. I'm getting it cut this morning, so I don't wanna put a bunch of product in it. Think I should get my nails done too. I got that flexi hose on the top. That's just for Mortsky. If you've never tried these scrubs in a bucket, I recommend them. These guys wouldn't throw money at me if I was dancing, so I'm not saying it because they're paying me. The guy that puts the glass in my hot rods turned me on to these. He cleaned the whole windshield area with them, even when he got that tacky glue stuff on it, and they work pretty good. And they make good hand cleaners when you're in between doing things. Okay, we got all the bolts out. We're ready to start lifting this off. So 2 things that I like to do before I break the seal on an engine, whether it's you know, new, old, whatever. On these Fords, they got this little water nipple bypass hose, I think is what it's called. It goes back to the intake there. I like to, you're gonna have to fight with that. And what I like to do is take those clamps loose, get them as far out of the way as I can, and then take some like channel locks and break both ends of that hose loose, just turning it back and forth. And if it's old and it breaks or cracks, well, you were gonna need to replace it anyway. If it's a good hose, you should be able to get it loose. I got that loose on both sides. That'll make taking the intake off a lot easier. The other thing is, you know, plug the holes going down into the motor and then blow this off real good, all the cracks and crevices all the way around. And, you know, just try to keep it clean before you break the seal. Well, I got an assortment of pry bars. It's time to break this intake loose. I've already tried prying on the front of it and nothing happened. Modern silicone's good stuff. I don't want to just go hog wild and start smashing things up, so instead of putting the big Mac Daddy in there, I'm going to use some smaller ones, see if I can find some spots to work around the edges. If you're anything like me, it's always tempting to just hit it with something. You got to curb that impulse. I got all the bolts out of the intake and I worked my way around with wedges and screwdrivers and hammers, and I got that all broke loose. But now I'm having this problem. On these big block Fords, every corner has a stud. And you have to lift them off square or the studs will bind if you try to rock it back and forth. Well, you can't do that with this hose on the front. I was thinking I could lift it up and then lift the back up and then pull that hose out, but you can't lift the back up without lifting the front up. So I'm either gonna have to pull those studs out, which there's not a lot of meat sticking up to get double nuts on those to try to spin them out. I think I'm just gonna have to sacrifice that hose and cut it in half. Well, normally when you got a stud that won't come out, you can run a nut down on it and then run another nut over that, lock the 2 nuts together, and then use the bottom nut to spin the stud out. The problem is there's not enough meat. When I run this nut down on there, there's no more stud sticking up to put the second nut on. I'm not gonna mess with it anymore. I'm gonna cut that hose off, take the intake off. Then I'm gonna get those studs out of there, clean them really good, run a thread chaser down the threads. Maybe I'll lube them with something, run them back in after the other intake goes on. Then I can get that hose on, drop the intake on, set those studs in place, and I don't have to fight with them. And I don't have to try to do some magic to get that hose on there. I think the last time I put that hose on, I just cut it to length and then bent it in half, put one end on and then unfolded it and wrestled with it for an hour. Oh, let's cut the hose off. Ow. So here we go. That is one clean engine. All right, now I told you before that's the second intake I've had on this car. Here's why I'm taking it back off. First of all, it's not mine. It belongs to a buddy of mine that does all my machine work. It's a Super Cobra Jet intake, and these are Thunder Jet heads. So look at the difference in port size. It's astronomical. So basically that intake port is so big that it pretty much matches this gasket. So the airflow coming down into my intake, running down into my intake runner, is hitting this whole edge right here like a wall, just a sheer edge. And that's not good. That's like a big horsepower killer. Modern engine building has gone away with the bigger ports or better ideals. It's all about moving the air through the engine with as little turbulence as possible and just flow rates. Basically all an engine is a pump. The more air you can suck in and push out, the better the engine's going to perform. I got to give it to GM, those LS motors. That's why they perform so well. The head design is amazing. You can make a lot of power with these heads and these big block Fords. Even the iron heads, people make 1,000 horsepower with these things. I'm not anywhere near that. I'm half that at best. But that was definitely killing me. Here's the other thing about big block Fords that I hate. You see all of this heat discoloration right here? They actually put an exhaust port right there in the intake manifold that runs through underneath the carburetor in the plenum, and that kills fuel. Anytime you heat that carburetor too much, it'll boil fuel off. You'll have percolation issues, you'll have vapor lock issues. One of the worst things you can do to an engine is run it lean, and heating that gas, heating that air charge is going to make it run lean. And you're going to fight that. I've been fighting that. You can see I got a phenolic spacer on here to try to keep the temperature down on the carburetor. I put that return style system in. Well, unfortunately, even this aluminum intake manifold, it has that heat, that exhaust crossover. I guess the idea is to heat it up on a cold day and atomize the fuel better. Bleh. We don't want none of that junk. We don't even want to choke on this thing. So we're going to put that single plane on there, and then I'm going to do a little trick that I'll talk you through and show you where we're going to block those exhaust crossovers off and get any excess heat away from that manifold in the carburetor. Here's these exhaust crossovers we were talking about earlier, and we don't want those because all they do is heat up the air, heat up the carburetor. That's probably still hot. Nope. So I made these. These are just some steel shims that I had laying around from something or another, and we're going to block these ports off. Well, there's a few different ways that people do this, and one is they just take a soda can and they cut a piece out that they put over this, then put the gasket on, and then they bolt this down and call it good. I don't like that. I feel like that's going to not only interfere with the sealing surfaces on the intake, because it's going to add some thickness behind the gasket, but also it's, you know, it's going to burn through eventually. It has to. It's just real thin metal. What I'm going to do is take these steel shims that I made. They're not really thick, but they're all right. I'm gonna die kim this with some of this steel blue die kim, and then measure out where these are gonna set. Lay them on there. That way? That way. No, this way. Lay them on there, and then I'm gonna scribe a line around that and mark it. And then I'm gonna use a die grinder and a small bit, and very carefully, I'm gonna relieve a little bit of the casting around this so that this just drops inside of it flush. And then I'm gonna take some high temp silicone and silicone in that recess, drop that in it where it glues in tight, and that'll pretty much be a permanent block off for that exhaust crossover. So we got these plates made up, and now we have our marks where we're going to cover these ports. And now I just need to carefully recess in there. I'm going to take my time and do it the best I can. They don't really have to be perfect. Like I said, some people just take tin cans and cut them up and put those in there. I don't want to do that though. I want to do the wrong thing the right way. Wrong thing the right way. Anyway, I'm gonna block those off. Okay, so it ain't the prettiest porting work I've done. It's actually kind of chewy, but I'm just trying to keep that edge clean mostly. And that's the right way. There we go. And there's our block off plate. It's flush with the intake. And then, like I said, some high temp silicone behind that, put it in place. Exhaust crossover completely blocked. So there's side 2 done. That one came out a little bit better. This sits flush. I might do a little work right here. It's sticking out a little bit, but it's so close, it's so flush that there's no way that's gonna cause any or enough distortion to stop these ports from sealing good. Whatever I'm saying. That one's like a machine fit, boys. I can't even hardly get her out of there. It popped right in. Look at that. Highly calibrated eyeball. Come on now. It's really in there. That's not too bad by hand. I definitely didn't. Oh, there it goes. There we go. I'll probably take a little material down. It was like right here. Probably this hump. Probably got a hump I could see right there. Perfect. All right, party people. I chased all of those threads out with the tap. Cleaned everything up. So now I'm going to silicone around all the water jackets. And yes, big block Fords have windowed holes into the water jacket. It's these top holes on the 4 corners, and then these right here, inner holes that go down next to this heat crossover, those are windowed into the valley of the motor. So I just like to use some thread sealant on every bolt. And I am going to put these corner studs back in and use them to drop the intake down, and then that crossover or that bypass hose, I'm just going to slip it on one side. I'll probably put some lube on it, then fold it in half and slip it on the other side. There's enough of a gap there I measured. I should be able to get that on. Alright, I missed filming it because I don't know how to work a camera, but I had a little clearance issue right here. I had to take a little bit of that intake off, and then I went over and torqued these 20 pounds and then 30 pounds, and you do the bolts that go in at an angle first from the center out, and then the bolts that go straight down last from the center out. There's 14 bolts in this stupid thing, and I have no idea why they use so many. I guess that's why I'm not an engineer. I'd have just put one big bolt right down the middle. Works for me, right? Okay, so it's torqued down. Can you believe that this Velcro intake gasket kit did not come with O-rings for the distributor, seal for the distributor? It didn't come with the thermostat gasket, none of that stuff. Man, I swear sometimes. So I'm probably gonna reuse that stuff. I didn't tear any of those gaskets, so they should be okay with a little bit of silicone. And if nothing else, it looks better. I didn't clean the intake. I probably could have, but I drive this car literally every day or every other day, so it gets dirty. You can't keep a motor clean if you drive them all the time. You might as well just give up or go see a doctor about your OCD. All I got to do now is put some accessories back on, put the carburetor on. I think I might go ahead and jet it up a little bit just to make sure I don't have a lean spot. I'm thinking because this is a single plane, I might actually end up being leaner than I was with the dual plane. I don't know. Maybe I'll just throw it on there and drive it for a little bit and see what happens. All right, we almost got her buttoned down. Once again, I thought I was filming all that, so hooray for dumbasses. What are you doing? Looks good. Looks better than it did, that's for sure. Hopefully it runs as good or better, and I'll be happy. So I'll go around and double check everything, but I'm pretty sure we're ready to pour some
windshield wiper fluid.
Yeah, some blinker fluid in here, and then fire this bad boy up. It should just start and run and be pretty much the same as it was before. The air-fuel ratio might change a little bit with the single plane intake, but I think mid to high range, it's definitely going to run better without those ports being a sheer wall that the air is hitting. That's the plan. Let's give her a drink. Well, I didn't film it. We got to do a little troubleshooting. We got her all back together, and I started it, and it wasn't happy at all. Popping and lean and backfiring, and I know from experience it was a vacuum leak, a big vacuum leak. Well, just to be safe, I brought it up to top dead center, put it on the timing mark, rechecked my firing order. Somehow I got all that right. So then I start looking around the intake, and I'm thinking one of those ends didn't seal right. I don't know. What I was thinking is that it was one of these ports didn't seal right on the gasket. And I don't know if it caught it on the video, but at some point when I was putting this together, I reached back to the back and checked to make sure there wasn't a big old hole back there for that brake booster. And I just missed it. And I could plug it off before I went any farther. And I didn't feel nothing. And that's because I already had the carburetor on. And if you look back here, hopefully you can see under the carburetor right there, that might be a vacuum leak. Dummy. I swear I can't get good help. We got that plugged off. Got the carbonator back on. Woo-wee. Ready to give her a try. What you didn't see before when I hit the key is it started. It was just horrible. Well, we got that plugged off back there. Bibbidi bobbidi boop. Let's see what happens. Everything is going to be all right. Got a little warmth in her. I don't think... Oh, no, we got the thermostat to open. I don't see any glaringly obvious leaks. I'm happy. I think that went pretty smooth. And now I should be able to touch right here, and that intake is still cold. I can hold my hand right on that. There's a little bit of parasitic warmth from the exhaust hitting that plate that I installed, but that's, I mean, nothing. Before that was blocked off, running that long, there's no way you would have been able to put your fingers right here. And that is probably almost literally the worst spot to have heat, right under the carbonator. Crazy. Why'd you do that, Ford? So I'm gonna top off the old drinkalizer, and then yeah, sometimes you just snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. So when we did that first fire, guys, I just knew I was gonna put my finger in the way. When I did the first fire, the one that I didn't show you, I just knew, like, I was defeated. I knew that there was, what are you doing? And a sheep over there just eating a stick, happy as can be. But I just knew that that gasket messed up, or the intake wasn't sitting flat or something. There was one of those intake runners was, well, that didn't help. My hand's dirtier than my face. I just knew that one of those intake runners was not lining up or something like that. Well, as it turns out, I just missed a big vacuum plug. And you know, when you see something like that, you're like, dummy, why'd you do that? And then in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, thank God I'm a dummy and I did that, because now I don't have to take this whole thing back apart. So I can tell you right off the bat that every one of those idle screws took about a quarter of a turn out, because it was idling super lean. And I know that's not exactly how you're supposed to adjust those, but that's how I did it. So having that larger plenum single plane intake definitely made a difference in the air-fuel ratio when it was idling. And I can tell you that it sounds a lot more responsive, and I'm almost like right next door to pretty sure, almost positive, that it's because there's no more sheer wall right there that the intake runner is just hitting with air and fuel and causing all kinds of crazy stuff to happen. Now it's got a clean path right in there. So happy. That's a big score for me. That was $120 at a swap meet. And let me tell you, big block Ford stuff is harder than hen's teeth to find. I'm telling you, it is getting that way. Even, you know, I hate to say it, big block Chevy stuff, it's getting hard to find at these things too. Small block Chevy, I don't think you're ever gonna run out of finding that stuff. I gotta find out why I had a light on. I didn't have any lights on. This light was on too. It ain't on now, but that means something's got to be messed up in that ignition switch somewhere. Maybe I'll never fix it. Maybe it'll just be part of the Junk Bucket Torino's charm. All right, everybody, that's a big block Ford in a pile of junk. Can't wait to go do burnouts. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Tell all your neighbors, friends, best friends, grandmas about us. And we'll see you next time.